Part 12. Tomb Raider, Marry Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 111. Everyone continued to walk out and walked for almost an hour before relying on Sumu to identify the direction and walked out of the maze. When looking at the sky and trees outside, and breathing in the fresh air outside, everyone can feel the tiredness coming from the depths of their souls. But the damn thing is out. Fat Wong sat down directly on the ground, leaning on his backpack and breathing in the air outside. Hubei looked relatively calm, but the flashing light in his eyes showed his inner excitement. This time, he was inside. It was so thrilling, and I almost couldn't come back from being in danger several times. Now standing here, I feel that the tense nerves are completely relieved. However, as the tense nerves are relieved, an indescribable feeling of fatigue begins. The turbulent attack. Come on, let's go back directly. Hubei patted Fatty Wong and said. He wants to go back to the town now, go back to the guest house to take a good bath, and then have a good sleep. Sumu feels the same way, but his mental and physical strength are better than the others were, much better, so except for feeling a little tired, everything else was going well, but they had to go back to the town first. Everyone dragged their tired bodies back to the town. The town was still very lively with people coming and going. As soon as everyone was about to go back to the guest house, they saw two figures walking past not far away. Are those Ma Dada and Li Chunlei? Fatty Wong pointed at the two people who had walked into the corner of the alley and exclaimed. Sumu and the others also saw it, and couldn't help but be curious. Why did Li Chunlei and Ma Da boldly walk together? Come on, let's go over and have a look. As Fatty Wong said, he walked towards the place where the two disappeared, and Sumu and Hubei followed him. As soon as they reached the corner, they heard Ma Bingdao's voice coming from the other side. There was a bit of anger in his tone, and there was a faint feeling of threat. Do you want to say it or not? Where did Sumu and Hubei go? If you don't say anything, I'll deal with you. Ouch, I say Master Ma, I really don't know. Even if you beat me to death, I won't know. Li Chunlei's voice sounded submissive, but very firm. After hearing Li Chunlei's words, Hubei and Wang Fatty couldn't help but look at Sumu with the same meaning in their eyes. You kid can do it? Taking on a younger brother who is so loyal. Sumu ignored them and continued to listen to their conversation. Seeing that Li Chunlei didn't speak, Ma Dadafan became even more angry. He kicked the old basket next to him and shouted angrily, Don't pretend to be stupid for me, I'm still not here. No, you. You were so close to that Sumu, how could you not know where they were going? Be honest and explain it clearly to me, otherwise don't blame Mr. Ma, I'm rude. Li Chunlei sounded even more cowardly when he came to the business, and said solemnly, Master Ma, please spare me. I really don't know where they have gone. I am just a little person, and I will report to you wherever I go. Ah! Aren't you making things difficult for me? Okay. You won't say it, right? Ma boldly gritted his teeth and pointed at Li Chunlei with his finger. Then with a fierce expression, he stretched out his hand and said hello to Li Chunlei's head. I told you not to tell. Look at me picking you up. Li Chunlei saw Ma Dadaing suddenly attacking him, and quickly ducked away. Unexpectedly, Ma Dadaing moved quickly and kicked Li Chunlei directly in the back. Li Chunlei was caught off guard and was kicked. The whole person staggered forward several steps. Ma Bingdao refused to give up, and immediately stepped forward to deal with Li Chunlei. However, at this moment, Ma Bingdao suddenly felt a rapid voice coming from behind him. He heard the sound of footsteps, and he quickly looked back, only to see a fist coming toward his face. Bang! There was a muffled sound, and Ma Dada was punched to the ground. Sumu flicked his wrist, looked at Ma Dabang with disdain, and said, I heard you are looking for me. Brat, you dare to hit me. Ma boldly covered his beaten face with anger in his eyes. He didn't care about the helpers Hu Bei and Fatty Wang who came out from behind Su Mu. He got up and rushed towards Su Mu. "If you dare to hit me, I will beat you to death." Ma Dabang yelled cruel words, but then he was easily knocked to the ground by Su Mu again. Su Mu looked at Ma Dabang with disgust. His strength just now was much weaker. If he used all his strength to attack, Ma Dabang estimated that he was going to die at this moment. But even if he pulled back his strength, it was obvious that Ma Dadu was still no match for him. He was beaten until his nose was bruised and his face was swollen, and his face was as colorful as if a palette had been turned upside down. Ma Dabang Bold was so angry that he took out a gun from his arms and pointed it directly at Su Mu. "Brat, what are you doing? Would you like to try again?" Ma boldly had a gun in his hand, and his confidence, which had been beaten down to only a little bit, rose again. He pointed at Su Mu's head, his eyes almost bursting with fire. He put his finger on the trigger, knowing that as soon as he pulled the trigger, a bullet would pierce Su Mu's head. Thinking about Ma Dabang, he couldn't help but feel excited and wanted to do it immediately. Su Mu's eyes froze, but he didn't expect Ma Dabang to have something on his body. "With the gun fired, I was thinking about how to quickly solve this trouble and give this horse a lesson for being bold." Suddenly 2 uniformed policemen appeared at the entrance of the alley. "What are you doing? Put the gun down." As soon as Ma Dabang saw the police appear, he immediately showed a panicked look on his face. He didn't care about Su Mu and the others, and turned around and ran away. The 2 policemen didn't expect that the other policemen would dare to run away after hearing their orders. They were stunned. After a moment, he also hurriedly chased out. But within a moment, only Su Muhaba and the others were left in the alley. "Master Su, Master Hu, you are back." When Li Chunlei saw Su Mu and the others, he quickly came over with a look of surprise. Su Mu looked at his hand rubbing his back and asked, "Are you okay?" Li Chunlei shook his head flattered. It's okay, it's just a joke." "Which of you just called the police?" After confirming that there was nothing wrong with Li Chunlei, Su Mu turned around and asked Shirley Yang and the others who came over after burning some. However, everyone shook their heads to indicate that it was not him. "It was me who called the police." Suddenly, a voice came from around the corner. Everyone looked for the sound and saw a familiar figure walking out, Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 112. It was me who called the police. Suddenly, a voice came from around the corner. Everyone looked for the sound and saw a familiar figure walking out. He was wearing an elegant gown, a gentleman's hat, and a pair of brown round glasses. The person who came was none other than Chen Yulu, Chen Blind. "It's you," Su Mu didn't expect it to be Blind Man Chen, and he was surprised. "I heard that Ma boldly came to see Li Chunlei. I was afraid that the boy would cause harm, so I called the police." Blind Chen simply said a few words as an explanation for calling the police. But is this considered a favor to Su Mu and the others? After saying thank you, Su Mu prepared to go back to the guest house with everyone. Blind Chen also followed them back to the guest house. "Have you obtained the Dragon Bone book?" Blind Chen asked curiously. Su Mu didn't hide anything and told him directly, "I got it." "So what are you going to do next?" Blind Chen continued to ask. Su Mu glanced at everyone and said casually, "After everyone has rested, we will go to Professor Sun to help us answer the contents of the Dragon Bone book, but now, we have to let's go get some sleep first." After walking around in the cave, everyone is exhausted. Hu Bei and Fatty Wang both nodded secretly. What they need most now is a bed, a whole head, so that they can have a good sleep. Blind Chen was non-committal, and after thinking about it, he calmly said, "Then I can't find him first." "Can't find him? Why?" Su Mu was startled and looked at him with some confusion. Blind Chen replied unhurriedly. Professor Sun went to pick up a boy he had befriended for many years. He and that boy had often met and studied ancient characters together before. Maybe he won't come back so early now. Oh, Sumu breathed a sigh of relief and said, it's not like he won't come back later. It just so happens that we can rest a little longer. When he comes back, we can go find him for answers. With that said, Sumu called everyone to go back and rest. Who knew that the next moment, Blind Chen directly stopped them. I know where the muchen bead you are looking for is. Blind Chen's words immediately stopped everyone who had turned around and left. Sumu turned around, doubting that he had heard wrong, and asked again, what did you just say? I said, I know where muchen bead is. You don't have to wait for Professor Sun to answer it so hard. As he said this, Blind Chen, perhaps afraid that Su would believe what he said, took out a human skin map from his pocket, and the map marked the location of muchen bead. What? You actually know where muchen is? Hubei looked shocked, and his expression looked a little dull. Where is muchen bead? You tell me. Shirley Yang looked at Blind Chen excitedly. She worked so hard to obtain the Dragon Bone book just to know the whereabouts of the muchen bead. Now Blind Chen actually said that he knew. How could this not make her excited? Sumu, on the other hand, looked calm. Because he also knows. Blind man, since you know the location of muchen bead, why do you still lie to us to go to the cave? Fatty Wang thought of all the thrilling encounters they had encountered in the cave. He couldn't help but feel a surge of anger in his heart. He stepped forward and grabbed Blind Chen by the collar and asked fiercely. Calm down, calm down. Blind Chen grabbed Fatty Wang's hand and didn't look frightened. Sumu also patted Fatty Wang on the shoulder to calm him down. Although Fatty Wang was angry that Blind Chen had lied to them, he slowly relaxed. He opened the hand that was holding Chen Xiaozi's clothes. When Chen Xiaozi's clothes were loosened, he quickly straightened out his wrinkled clothes. He was satisfied after making sure that there were no wrinkles at all. Tell me, why did you lie to us? Sumu spoke calmly, with no emotion visible in his deep eyes. Blind Chen smiled and said, I lied to you to go to the cave, but actually it was just to test your strength. Test our strength? Why do I not believe it so much? Fat Wang curled his lips with suspicion on his face. Blind Chen ignored him and talked about his past. After I went to Pingshan in western Hunan, I got a human skin map when I went to Wangmu in Dian, Blind Chen said, touching the map in his hand. His eyes hidden under his glasses were full of memories. The directions on the map led us to a large tomb, which is the tomb of King Xian. After fighting for half my life, I thought I could easily capture this big tomb, but I didn't expect that after I led someone to break into King Xian's tomb. But I encountered the biggest setback in my life. We couldn't even break into the tomb guarding mausoleum. Almost all the people I brought in were destroyed there. Although I survived, I was killed. The poisonous gas inside blinded a pair of eyes. Sumu listened quietly to Blind Chen's story. Although he knew some of Blind Chen's stories in his heart, he didn't know much about it. It was the first time for Hubei and Fatty Wang to know such a thing, and they couldn't help but feel a little sad. Therefore, I lied to you to go to the catacombs just to test your strength. If you can't even break through the catacombs, you should give up the idea of presenting to the king's tomb to get the muchen bead as soon as possible. I don't want to see you repeat what I did. Repeat the same mistakes. Everyone was silent for a while, and it took a long time for Sumu to speak. Since you also have good intentions, we won't care about the fact that you lied to us. As he said that, Sumu glanced at Hubei and Fatty Wang, and Hubei and Fatty Wang nodded in the same way, expressing their forgiveness for Blind Man Chen. Since everyone now knows the whereabouts of muchen bead, they will not. I was anxious to find Professor Sun again, but I was all tired now. Sumu said that we should go back and have a rest first. Yes, I still have to rest. I'm really exhausted now. Hubei stretched his waist and felt that all the bones in his body were making a click-click sound in protest. Shirley Yang was yawning, already looking tired. You wait first. Blind Chen stopped everyone again. Don't worry, I haven't finished talking yet. Underscore. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 113. Don't worry, I haven't finished talking yet. Blind Chen stopped everyone again. I said, are you finished with your child? We don't care about you lying to us, what else do you want to do? Fat Wang turned around and glared at Blind Chen with an impatient expression. He wanted to take a bath and sleep immediately. Why couldn't this blind guy let him have his way? But his impatience was completely against Chen. The blind man didn't have any offensive power, but Chen blind man warned him very calmly, young man, don't be angry. Sumu almost laughed out loud at Chen Xiaozi's appearance, and asked him directly what his purpose was. Tell me, what else do you want to do? Sumu said angrily. Blind Chen showed a very warm smile and said, I gave you clues to the cave before, and now you have also obtained the Dragon Bone book. As he spoke, the expression on Chen Xiaozi's face began to slowly change, and he said with a somewhat unclear meaning. Now that you got what you want, shouldn't you give me some reward? Hey! You lied to us and you want reward. Fatty Wang was not happy when he heard this. He was still feeling angry. This guy actually dared to ask them for payment? However, before Fatty Wang could get angry, Sumu suppressed him. Sumu thought about it. Thinking, he nodded in agreement. Okay, what do you want? An obvious weapon? Or gold and silver money? Blind Chen had a smile on his face, but he shook his head and said, I don't want any of these things you mentioned, I just want one thing. Everyone was stunned and asked in confusion, what do you want? Blind Chen said three words very calmly, Wen Zionjiao. Smell fragrant jade. Sumu frowned slightly, looked at Blind Chen up and down with suspicion, and said, how do you know we have this? Shirley Yang next to her spoke at this time. She stood up and looked at Blind Chen and said with a determined smile. If I guessed correctly, Wen Zionjiao was the reason why you tricked us into going to the cave, right? Miss Yang, please don't talk nonsense. I said it too, just to test your strength. I did it for your own good. Blind Chen refused to admit it. Oh, I believe you are the one who has a ghost, Fat Wang sneered. What I said is the truth. Why don't you believe it? But Wen Zionjiao is indeed what I want. Isn't this the way to go? Since you are going to go, then help me bring it back by the way. But don't, you said you weren't lying to us, you are just an old liar. Hubei also saw clearly the old liar nature of Blind Chen, and expressed his disdain. Blind Chen didn't care what Fatty Hubei Wang thought. He looked directly at Sumu and said, anyway, no matter what you think, I just want to smell the fragrant jade. Sumu laughed and said, Wen Zionjiao doesn't have it, and I can't give it to you if I have it. We have worked so hard to get it, and it's impossible for you to give it to you directly with just a blank word. I will get other things in return for what you want. Give it to you, but don't even think about Wen Zionjiao. Sumu, you can't do this. Blind Chen was anxious when he heard this, but what Sumu said usually would not change. Fatty Wang was laughing at the side. Seeing Blind Chen's face anxious and thinking of causing trouble, he took out a bronze plaque from his bag and weighed it in his hand. Let me tell you, we got a lot this time. Guess what it is? Fat Wang handed the bronze medal to Blind Man Chen's hand and said. Blind Man Chen took the bronze medal and touched it carefully in his hand for a while, then his face changed slightly and he said. Is this what you came out of a female corpse? As soon as these words came out, everyone was surprised. Looking at Blind Chen's confident expression, they were a little confused and said, "How do you know?" Blind Chen laughed confidently, and then said, "The hair of this female corpse is very long." "Damn it, do you really know that?" "Have you seen?" Fat Wang couldn't wait to ask. Blind Chen nodded and said with a recalling tone, "We also encountered such a female corpse when we were lowering the tomb of the King Xian. She was wearing the same bronze medal and was very cruel. Most of the people I brought with me at that time were broken into the hands of the female corpse. It was not easy to get rid of it. Escape from the female corpse." As he said this, Blind Chen glanced at everyone and said with emotion in his tone, "I didn't expect you to be able to deal with that female corpse. It's a bit beyond my expectation." Fatty Wang heard this and said proudly, "Is that so? Don't even look at who we are. They're just female corpses, how can they stand up to us?" The boastful look made Hu Ba on the side smack his tongue. "I have seen shameless people, but I have never seen such shameless people. I don't want to think about how scared I was at that time." Sumu actually had some ideas in mind. He previously speculated that the female corpse was the backup man left behind by the Queen Mother of the West. Now Chen Xiaozi also said that there is such a female corpse in the tomb of King Xian. Obviously, the tomb of King Xian is also related to Queen Mother 11. So, why did Queen Mother 11 arrange so many big tombs? What is her ultimate goal? One puzzle after another lingered in his mind, making Sumu feel a little dizzy. If you can deal with that female corpse, then if you go to present it to the king's tomb, at least you won't end up defeated like me at the beginning. In this way, I can feel a little relieved. Blind Chen really has good intentions and thinks about their safety. Now that he knows their strength, he feels a little relieved. "Forget it, since you don't want to give me the scented jade, I won't force it, so I'll leave first. I'll leave this human skin map to you. I hope it can be of some use to you." Blind Chen said, waving his hands to everyone, turned around and walked outside. Looking at Blind Chen's back, Shirley Yang frowned, thought about it and turned around and said to Sumu, "Otherwise, should we give Wen Xianjiao to him?" Sumu was stunned. She didn't expect Shirley Yang to have such an idea, so she couldn't help but ask, "How did you think of giving it to him? You don't mind that he lied to us?" "Shirley." Yang shook her head and said, "In fact, I think what he said is not unreasonable. He knows how dangerous the tomb of King Xian is. Maybe he asked us to go to the cave to test our strength. After all, we know how dangerous it is in the cave. If you can't break through, then what's the use of going to the king's tomb? It's not like I can't find the Muchen bead. Therefore, since he has good intentions and wants to help us, there is no big problem in giving Wen Xianjiao to him. That thing is just a valuable thing to us, but maybe it will be an extremely important thing to him. Woolen cloth? And didn't he give us a map?" Hu Bai and Fatty Wang also listened to Shirley Yang's words. When Shirley Yang looked over after she finished speaking, Fatty Wang took out Wen Xianjiao even though he was a little reluctant. "You decide." Fatty Wang turned his head away, not wanting to be reluctant to part with it. Sumu smiled and said, "I will compensate you with other things." There is no way, of course the husband chooses to support the decision made by his wife. After holding the Wen Xianjiao, Sumu stopped Chen Xiangzi who had already walked a certain distance, and handed the Wen Xianjiao in the box to he. "Have you really decided to give it to me?" Blind Chen asked again while holding the box. After confirming that Sumu had really decided to give it to him, he put the box into his arms. After putting what he wanted into his arms, Blind Chen took the picture. He patted his chest and said, "In fact, I lied to you when I said something just now." Everyone looked at Blind Chen in shock and heard Blind Chen say, "In fact, it is true that I said Professor Sun went to pick him up, but he had already picked him up, and he was right where Professor Sun lived." Damn it, let me just say that this blind guy is an old liar. Fatty Wong gritted his teeth and said, rolling up his sleeves and about to step forward to arrest the person. Old liar, give me back my Wenzionjiao. Blind Chen took a few steps back while holding the box on his chest, touched his nose in embarrassment, and said, once the things are in my hands, you don't want to take them back, but I can tell you one more news. What news? Sumu asked. The messy text on your bronze medal is actually a kind of text map. Only Professor Sun's old friend knows the way to decipher this text map. You can go there directly to find him. Everyone was surprised, and Sumu asked casually, then do you know the name of Professor Sun's friend? Blind Chen thought for a while and replied, it seems to be called Wu San's Hung. The others didn't know him, but Sumu was shocked. He didn't expect it to be him. Sumu didn't expect to be contacted so soon. The characters in the world of Tomb Raiders are somewhat looking forward to meeting them next. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 114. Everyone originally planned to go back to the guest house to take a rest. Now that they knew that the person who could unlock the secret of the text map on the bronze medal was Professor Sun, everyone was impatient and wanted to rush to Professor Sun to have a look. Blind Chen knew that they were going to ask Professor Sun's old friend to help him look at the bronze medal, and he strongly urged him to go with them. Because he was also very curious, what kind of secrets were hidden in the text map on the bronze plaque. Sumu had no objection, so he and everyone else rushed directly towards the place where Professor Sun lived. When they arrived at the place where Professor Sun lived, a few people went in and saw Professor Sun at home. Besides Professor Sun, there was also a young man, who was exactly the Wu San's Hung that Blind Chen mentioned. This was the first time for Sumu to see the young Wu San's Hung. After seeing him now, he was quietly looking at this powerful figure in the tomb robbers without leaving any trace. This man has a pair of thick black sword eyebrows, his eyes are dark and deep, and the bridge of his nose is slightly straight. He is considered a good-looking man. When Professor Sun saw Sumu and the others coming in, his eyes were full of surprise, and he quickly came over to greet them and said with a smile, "Are you back? How was this trip? Is it dangerous?" "Fortunately, it was quite thrilling, but we all came out safely," Sumu replied. "It's good if it's safe. What are you doing?" Professor Sun took a look at the current state of several people and the bulging backpacks on their bodies, and asked tentatively, "Have you found the Dragon Bone book?" "Right." Everyone was in a good mood. Professor Sun was also happy and said quickly, "Then you guys wait for me for a while. I have a friend here who is a guest. I will tell him first and then I will help you decipher the Dragon Bone book." Seeing Professor Sun's anxious look, Sumu grabbed him and comforted him. "Professor, don't worry, we are actually here to ask your friend for help." As he said that, Sumu cast his eyes on Wu San's Hung, who had been silent for a long time. The meaning was unclear. Professor Sun was surprised and looked back at Wu San's Hung, wondering, looking for him. Sumu nodded, then walked to Wu San's Hung, stretched out his hand to him, and said, "Hello, I'm Sumu. I wonder if Mr. Wu can do us a favor?" Wu San's Hung was stunned for a moment, then pointed at himself in disbelief and asked, "You want me to help? Don't know what you can do for me." Professor Sun also looked at Sumu with a puzzled expression, and then Shirley Yang came over and handed his bronze plaque to Wu San's Hung. "I heard that you can decipher this kind of text, and I hope you can do us a favor and decipher it for us." Wu San's Hung looked at the thing in his hand with a puzzled look, but after just a brief glance, his eyes were attracted by the things on the bronze plate. He weighed the bronze plate in his hand and said to Sumu and the others, "I helped you with this, but it will take some time to decrypt this kind of text." "No problem," we waited for everyone to nod. With that said, everyone stayed at Professor Sun's residence. Wu San's Hung sat on the sofa and carefully observed the messy words on the bronze sign. The others were waiting quietly. Even Professor Sun looked at the things in Wu Sanzhen's hands curiously and wanted to know what secrets were hidden on them. Wu Sanzheng could tell at first glance that this was a text map, but as he said, it would take a certain amount of time to parse this kind of text map. However, he could see some clues from the simple text. Come. This seems to be a map of an ancient tomb in the state of Lu during the Warring States period, and it was also quite aggressive, so it was worth a visit. Wu Sanzheng told everyone what he had decrypted from the text map, and he was very sure that this was a place worth visiting. Everyone was very happy when they heard it, and Fatty Wang was even more happy. Another aggressive one, it seems that Fatty's fortune has been good recently. Hu Ba just glanced at him and didn't answer. There wasn't much expression on his face, and he seemed to be thinking about something. Ding Sishan didn't have many thoughts about this, whether to go or not. Du Hai didn't decide now, and she didn't think it mattered. Shirley Yang only cared about the whereabouts of Muchen Bede, and wasn't very interested in other tombs. Regarding the news about the tomb of Lu State during the Warring States period, her reaction, the bigger one, was Su Mu. When he heard that the written map recorded a tomb of the state of Lu, Su Mu's first reaction was to think of the Lu Palace. Is the tomb you are talking about the tomb of King Lu Shang of the state of Lu? Su Mu raised the question directly. Everyone looked at him suspiciously. Wu Sanzheng also looked at him and asked doubtfully, why do you think so? Su Mu looked deep in thought and did not answer immediately. Wu Sanzheng ignored him and continued to slowly decipher the code. After carefully studying the text map, he was surprised to find that what was shown on the map was really the state of Lu. Tomb of King Lu Shang. How did you know just now that this is the tomb of King Lu Shang? Wu Sanzheng looked at Su Mu curiously. Even he knew that the tomb owner belonged to King Lu Shang after studying the text map. How did Su Mu know this? Not only Wu Sanzheng was curious, but also others. They all looked at Su Mu with the same curiosity, hoping to get the answer from his mouth. The thoughts in Su Mu's mind turned quickly, and he said in a deceitful way, I am a good calculator, and this is not the first time you know this. As he said that, Su Mu pointed at Hu Bai and Fatty Wang. The two looked confused at first, and then they remembered that Su Mu had been very certain about something many times, even this time in the cave. Many times, Su Mu is like a magic fortune teller who can do calculations and calculations, which is simply admirable. Thinking of this, the two of them nodded in agreement and said, Su Mu is indeed like a divine fortune teller sometimes, which is amazing. Wu Sanzheng still didn't believe it when he heard it. Su Mu continued, actually, as soon as you said it was the tomb of the Lu state, I could basically guess it. Why? Su Mu smiled and began to tell the story, saying, it is said that there was a prince in the state of Lu who had a ghost seal that could borrow soldiers from the underworld. He was always victorious in battles and was named King of Lu Shang by the Duke of Lu. One day, King Lu Shang asked to see the Duke of Lu and said that he wanted to borrow the underworld from the underworld. After many years of military service, now there are imps in the underworld causing trouble, so I have to go and repay the favor of the Lord of the Earth. The Duke of Lu agreed, and King Lu Shang also died everywhere. The Duke of Lu thought that King Lu Shang would come back, so he ordered people to build it. An underground palace is used to preserve the body of King Lu Shang. It is expected that King Lu Shang will come back one day to continue fighting for him on the battlefield. The tomb you are talking about should be the palace of King Lu Shang that is used to store the body of King Lu Shang. There is such a story. Fatty Wang was surprised. Can you figure this out? Wu Sanzheng said non-committally. Su Mu looked at him and smiled. Do not believe? How about I do the math for you? Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 115. Do not believe? How about I do the math for you? Wu Sanzheng smiled generously and said, okay, what do you want to do, Su? Mu thought for a while and said, Let me help you calculate your marriage. You just say a word and I can help you calculate it. Sumyu had a small thought in mind. He said this because he knew what happened between Wu Sanzhong and Chen Wenjin. Sure enough. Wu Sanzhong said a word casually. Sumyu closed his eyes and pretended to be calculating in his mind, then opened his eyes and said Wu Sanzhong said. You like a woman. This woman is well educated. She should be called Chen Wenjin, right? Wu Sanzhong was really shocked now. He didn't expect that Sumyu would really say the name of the person he liked without any prompting. He couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He rubbed his hands and wanted to ask more questions. Sumyu, seeing his intention, he interrupted. Some things can only be revealed briefly. If you say too much, it will affect your destiny. Sumyu's words were meant to deceive others, but Wu Sanzhong really listened to them. She originally wanted to ask about what happened between him and Chen Wenjin, but now she didn't dare to speak again. But I do have some confidence in Sumyu's ability to figure things out. How long will it take to unlock this map? After waiting for about half an hour, Shirley Yang asked. Wu Sanzhong thought for a while and said this kind of text map is the most complicated. I'm afraid it will take at least several days to completely solve it. Hearing this, Shirley Yang was a little silent, with her head slightly lowered as if she was thinking about something. Professor Sun asked, then what are your plans next? Who? Bai and Fatty Wang did not answer, but Shirley Yang spoke up and said, I want to go to Yunnan directly. She couldn't wait to find the whereabouts of Muchen Bead. Now that she knew the location, she didn't want to wait any longer. However, after hearing what she said, Blind Chen stopped her. Let me tell you, you are not suitable to go to the king's tomb now. From my point of view, the reason why you were able to break out of the cave before was entirely due to Sumyu's ability. Blind Chen immediately revealed Sumyu's role in their team, and continued. With your current strength, if you still want to rely on Sumyu for everything like you did in the cave, it's best not to go, because then you will only become a drag on Sumyu, and no one will be able to survive in the end. Walk out. Blind Chen's words were a bit harsh, but they were true. Hu Ba, Wang Fatty, Shirley Yang, and others all became silent for a while. In my opinion, although Ding Sishan is thoughtful, you lack too much force value. You are the one who needs protection the most in the entire team. Hu Bai, you are calm and seem to be reliable, but sometimes you encounter it's easy to be hesitant when making decisions, and you're a little indecisive in doing things. These are all caused by your lack of confidence in what you have mastered. Not to mention you, Fatty Wang. To put it nicely, it's bluffing, to put it worst. Just mindless. After Chen blindly lectured him for a while, no one spoke up and thought that what he said made sense. After Chen blind said a lot, Sumyu spoke during the gap. Mr. Chen, you used to be the leader of Xiling, so what training methods can you use to improve our overall strength? Sumyu was very respectful when asking for advice. Blind Chen didn't intend to hide his secrets, so he said directly. Let's do this, Miss Yang, go back to the United States and let your father train you. At the very least, you must master Kuixing's kicking skills. Hu Bai, you can study your half of the 16-character secret technique. As for Wang Kaichuan, you. Blind Chen paused and said casually. Forget it, just take advantage of this period of time to control your greedy and impulsive temper, so that you can follow Sumyu to the grave. Fatty Wang shrugged non-committally and did not refute. Blind Chen then mentioned Ding Sishan, but before he could speak, Ding Sishan spoke first. I don't plan to go to the grave with you anymore. Shirley Yang and the others were surprised, looked at her in confusion, and asked, why? Ding Sishan smiled reluctantly and said. What Mr. Chen said makes sense. I can't help you much by following you, and sometimes it will become a burden to you. It's better to stay outside and help you with the logistics and help you see what's in the store, No. That's pretty good. Everyone was silent for a while, and after thinking for a while, they agreed with Ding Sishan's decision. Now that the follow-up matters have been arranged, everyone no longer plans to stay with Professor Sun. Anyway, Wu Sanzhong unlocked the secret of the text map. It would still take some time, so they decided to go back and have a rest first, and then separate tomorrow. They said goodbye to Professor Sun and Wu Sanzhong, and everyone returned to the guest house. After being busy in the cave for so long and experiencing so many thrilling things, everyone had already. I was a little tired, physically and mentally. When I returned to the guest house, each of them went directly back to their respective places without saying anything, took a comfortable bath, and then fell directly on the bed and fell asleep. Sumu also returned to the room with Shirley Yang. Just as he was about to take a shower, he heard a knock on the door. Sumu was surprised who could knock on the door at this time, so he walked to the door and opened the door. Outside the door standing was Hu Bei. When he saw Sumu, he smiled sheepishly and said, "I came to see you and wanted to ask you something." Sumu let him in. Shirley Yang went to pack her things and didn't care what the two grown men were saying. "Tell me, what's the matter?" Sumu asked. Hu Bei didn't hesitate and directly stated the purpose of his visit. "I want to ask you about the secret of advanced Feng Shui research." The secret? Sumu was a little stunned. He really didn't understand this thing very well, but seeing Hu Bei's expectant look on his face, Sumu couldn't help but hit him. Sumu lowered his head and thought for a moment, remembering the original novel in his mind. Hu Bei once met a descendant of Zhongshan Lianzi in Ma Yunling, Baiyun Mountain, and received advice from the other party, which benefited him a lot. So he said, "I still have some important things to do. So, I will guide you. You go find someone who can give you the help you need." Hu Bei's eyes lit up and he asked hurriedly, "Who is it?" Sumu told him about Ma Yunling in Baiyun Mountain and asked him to go there to find the descendants of Zhongshan Lianzi. Hu Bei was in a good mood after hearing this. He said thank you and left. Looking at Hu Bei looking at Yi's back, Sumu secretly cursed, hoping that Hu Bei would have good luck. Because in the original work, Zhongshan Lianzi's descendants went there to visit relatives, and whether they could meet Hu Bei or not depended on his luck. Shirley Yang had already packed up, took his clothes and took a shower and came out. Shirley Yang was steaming with heat, and even her skin was slightly red, which was very attractive. Sumu felt itchy at the sight, but she didn't even think about it. Just thinking about it, I pounced on him. "Aren't you tired?" She was caught off guard and was thrown forward. Shirley Yang leaned in Sumu's arms and said coquettishly. Sumu smiled evilly and kissed her. They were both out of breath before they were willing to let go. "We will be separated again tomorrow. We won't be able to see each other for a long time. Let's meet tonight." "You hate." In the room, an ambiguous gasp spread, and the room was full of spring scenery again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 116. The next day, everyone was preparing to say goodbye and leave. Shirley Yang also wanted to say goodbye to Sumu and prepare to return to the United States. "Husband, you must take care of yourself alone." Before leaving, the two of them were reluctant to leave like a young couple in love. Looking at Hu Bei and Fatty Wang beside them, their teeth ached. "Well, Shirley, you two, wait until I come back." Sumu kissed Shirley Yang, feeling really reluctant to let go. The two were intimate for a while, but finally they had to part ways. After seeing off Shirley Yang, Sumu went to see Hu Bei and the others again. After they separated from Hu Bei and Ding Sitien, Suemo took Fatty Wang with him. "So I went to Professor Sun's place. When I went there, Wu Sanzheng was still studying the text map, and he came up with more things than yesterday. Sumu didn't interrupt and just waited quietly, occasionally chatting with Professor Sun. When Wu Sanzheng was resting, he would also talk to Sumu about the things on the map, but most of the time Wu Sanzheng was still obsessed with research. Wu Sanzheng was very fast, and he studied the map thoroughly in just a few days. What was marked on the map was the Lu Palace of King Lu Shang, and the location and route of the underground palace were on the map. Sumu decided to go and have a look. Wu Sanzheng was also very curious about the Lu Palace and expressed his desire to go with him. Sumu had no objection, so he agreed on a time, prepared everything and set off. Wu Sanzheng took the first step and agreed with Sumu and the others on the location. On that day, Sumu and Fatty Wang waited at the agreed place for a short time when they saw Wu Sanzheng driving by with two people coming. Sumu looked at the two people next to Wu Sanzheng with some curiosity, a pretty woman, and a young man who looked vaguely ruthless. Sumu thought of these two people, and felt a little worried. And Sumu, get in the car quickly. Wu Sanzheng shouted, and Sumu and Fatty Wang threw everything into the trunk and jumped directly into the car. They were now driving to Shandongguazi Temple, and from there they started to follow the map. In the car, Wu Sansheng made an introduction to everyone. As Sumu expected, the woman was Chen Wenjin, the woman Wu Sansheng had a crush on. As for the man, it was Pan Zi in his youth, a man who regarded Wu Sansheng as his faith. Fatty Wang, after glancing at a few people, he quietly approached Sumu and muttered, "This is not a trip to the tomb, so what is the point of taking a woman with you? After all, not every woman has Shirley Yang's abilities. The only woman he, Fatty Wang, admires is Shirley Yang." Although Fatty Wang said these words quietly, it was enough for others to hear. Sumu saw that Chen Wenjin's expression changed, and even the smile on Wu Sansheng's face froze. Sumu turned around and glared at Fatty Wang. "Have you forgotten what Master Chen said before you came out? I ask you to change your ways. If you can't change, go back. I won't take you to the grave this time, apologize now." Sumu usually behaves well with everyone without any airs, but if he really has to scold someone with a straight face, it is quite scary. Fatty Wang heard this and said with a bitter look on his face, "No, I'll change it. Not yet. Miss Chen, I'm sorry. I offended you with my foul mouth. Don't mind." Fatty Wang was very flexible, and he apologized to Chen Wenjin with a smile. Chen Wenjin's expression was still not very good. He ignored the fat man's apology and instead focused his attention on Sumu. Wu Sanzheng had told her before that this man named Sumu was said to be very good at calculations. He was also a good fortune teller. Chen Wenjin glanced at Sumu, his eyes full of interest. "This guy doesn't look like a good calculator, does he?" But since Wu Sanzheng said so, then that should be it. She kind of wanted to see it and let him help with calculations. With this thought, Chen Wenjin asked Wu Sanzheng to stop the car, got out of the passenger seat, changed seats with Pan Zi, and sat directly next to Sumu. "Wenjin, what are you doing in the back?" Wu Sanzheng was puzzled. "Take your car, I have something to say to Sumu." Wu Sanzheng didn't know what she wanted to do, so he could only keep driving forward, but from time to time he would focus on the two people in the back seat. Sumu didn't know what Chen Wenjin wanted to do when he sat next to him, so he didn't say anything, just waiting for something to happen. Chen Wenjin glanced at Wu Sanzheng, who was driving in front of him, and saw that he was concentrating on driving, so he got a little closer to look at Sumu, and said in a low voice, "I heard you can calculate. Then you can do the math for me, too." Sumu was surprised. She didn't expect that Chen Wenjin came to find her just to make calculations for herself. She must have heard Wu Sanzheng say that he could calculate this matter. "Come on, what do you want to count?" Sumu asked. Chen Wenjin covered his mouth with his hand and said in a quieter voice, "Please help me calculate my fate." "Marriage?" "Yes, my marriage to him," Chen Wenjin said, pointing cautiously towards Wu San's hung. Sumu knew it well, but she didn't expect that Chen Wenjin would come to him to calculate the marriage between her and Wu San's hung. Sumu couldn't laugh or cry. Mu looked at Chen Wenjin, and then at Wu San's hung in front of him, who was pretending to drive seriously but was actually trying to eavesdrop on their conversation. He didn't know what to say. In fact, these two people had already hit it off, so it would be better to do it earlier. Puncture that layer of window paper and get married early, and you can avoid ending up like in the original work, where the third uncle has a miserable ending that will be regretted for the rest of his life. "Okay, let me do the math for you," Sumu responded, then closed his eyes. Chen Wenjin looked at him nervously, looking forward to the next result. Soon Sumu opened his eyes, and Chen Wenjin quickly asked, "How is it? How does it count?" Sumu smiled and said, "A good marriage." Chen Wenjin's face was suddenly filled with a smile, but then he heard Sumu say again, "But there will be disaster between you." Chen Wenjin was shocked and asked quickly, "What kind of disaster?" Sumu pretended to be an outsider and said enigmatically, "It has something to do with water." "Water?" "That's right, it's best not to go to the beach, otherwise this disaster will turn into a life and death disaster," Sumu deliberately said in a very alarmist tone. Just looking at Chen Wenjin's thoughtful look on his face, he didn't know if the other party had listened to what he said. "But he can do it now, and I will do it when the time comes. It's up to them if they don't believe what he said." Because of Sumu's words, Chen Wenjin was a little absent-minded for the next part of the way. Sumu didn't know what she was thinking, and he wasn't ready to continue to care about it. After many twists and turns, the destination was in sight. "It's almost here, _ Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 117. Wu Sanchen's car can no longer be driven when it reaches the county seat. Because the next road was not easy to drive, the group found a local fellow and borrowed his ox cart to continue on their way. After many twists and turns, everyone finally reached their destination. After getting off the ox cart, Fatty Wang covered his mouth and ran to the side of a tree. He bent down and vomited loudly. "This bullock cart is so bumpy, I feel like my stomach is about to be knocked out." After vomiting for a while, Fatty Wang straightened up and looked at the ox cart and complained. The look on his face looked really miserable. Sumu was a little amused and said, "If we don't sit here, we have to walk here. Would you rather walk by yourself, or ride on a bullock cart? Hey, don't underestimate our ox cart. This is the best means of transportation in this area. Without this ox cart, you might have to walk all day." The driver of the cart was Uncle Li, the guide Sumu and the others were looking for. He was a little unhappy when he saw that his cart was so disliked by Fatty Wang. Okay, I didn't say anything," Fatty Wang muttered. Everyone rested where they were for a while, and then they continued on their way after Fatty Wang recovered. When Fatty Wang saw what he was going to do, he would do something that could break a person's bones. After all, he got on the bullock cart with a bitter look on his face. Fortunately, it didn't take long this time for Uncle Li's bullock cart to pull everyone to the river. "Okay, let's take the water route next." As he spoke, Uncle Li patted his buttocks, and the old cow turned around and pulled the cart away slowly. Sumu looked a little surprised. He had only heard of the old horse knowing the way, but it turned out that this old cow do you have this ability. Wu San's hung took out the map and looked at it carefully, analyzed the best route on it, and looked at the river in front of him to confirm that it was indeed most convenient to take the water route next. However, Sumu frowned as he looked at the water. He suddenly remembered the troublesome corpse hiding place in the corpse cave in the original book. There were female ghosts and giant corpse turtles there, which was quite troublesome. Thinking about this, Sumu said, "How about we take the mountain road? If we go in by water, if we encounter any danger on the way, I'm afraid there will be some trouble. However, if you go over the mountain, it will take longer and consume a lot of energy." Chen Wenjin didn't know what Sumu was afraid of. He just thought that walking by water was the most convenient way, so he didn't agree to go all the way over the mountains. "I also think it is better to take the water route, which can save at least half the time. Moreover, what you said is just a guess. We may not encounter anything, right?" Wu Sanzhong also agreed with Chen Wenjin's opinion and continued, "Moreover, we have to bring a lot of things, and it will be very troublesome to walk on the mountain road. Let Fatty Wan carry all the things on his back, which will also allow him to exercise. It's time to lose some of the fat on his body." "Hey? Who am I provoking?" I said, "Brother Su, you can't." When Fatty Wang heard what Sumu said, he shook his head and resisted. "Just kidding, asking him to carry this far across the mountain is not called exercising, it is asking for trouble. By the time he gets there, he probably won't have lost much weight, and his life may be exhausted. I also agree to take the water route." Fat Wang looked at the high mountains and couldn't help shuddering. He firmly supported taking the water route. There was only Panza left, and Sumu was not prepared to ask for his opinion. After all, he was almost Wei Wu. "I have obeyed the orders of the 3 provinces, so I will naturally not go against Wu Sanzhen's wishes." "Okay, since you have decided to take the water route, then take the water route." Sumu couldn't change their minds and could only choose to agree. But then he thought about it. He wouldn't be afraid of encountering giant corpse turtles and female ghosts when he walked on the waterway. When the time came, he would be able to pick up attributes by killing a wave of them, so he wouldn't be afraid. It's not a bad thing. Thinking about it this way, Sumu doesn't care whether he takes the waterway or not. As for Wu Sanzhong and the others, they are the ones who insist on taking the waterway anyway. It doesn't matter if they are frightened, they will be more obedient. Everyone, after deciding to take the water route, the guide Li Bo took them to find a boatman. "Let me tell you, the place you want to go is through the cave." As he spoke, Li Bo pointed to the cave in the distance and said, "Legend has it that there is a snake spirit there, and only the boatman I took you to find can save you from danger." Everyone looked at each other in disbelief. I followed Uncle Li to the boatman's house and saw the dilapidated house. There was a big dog tied up in the wall. The boatman was sitting under the eaves smoking a cigarette. "Lao Li, I brought you some work." As soon as he walked into the boatman's yard, Uncle Li shouted inside, then opened the fence of the yard and let everyone in. "Woof woof woof." The local dog in the yard suddenly saw the stranger coming and barked a few times. After the boatman stood up to greet him, he closed his mouth and squatted in place. "Hey, this dog is quite smart." The fat man saw that the dog was a little smart, so he walked a few steps unconsciously, but then his expression changed. He held his nose and stepped back a few steps, pointed at the native dog and said in disgust, "Damn it, why does this dog stink so much?" Sumu glanced at the dog. The fat picker was very embarrassed about the dog, so he reminded him, "That's the smell of corpses, this dog may have grown up eating dead human flesh. The cave in front is probably a corpse cave." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Wu Sanzhong looked a little heavy and tentatively called to the native dog. It was just a trial, but the dog actually walked towards Wu Sanzhong obediently. Wu Sanzhong leaned forward slightly and smelled the scent of the native dog. After a moment, he stood up with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, "It does smell like death." As soon as these words came out, everyone's hearts trembled, and they all looked solemnly at the cave in front. Over there, Uncle Li had already negotiated the price with the boatman, and then went to help everyone pile their luggage on the boat. Wu went off. San Sheng and Sumu looked at each other, and both saw that there was something wrong with Uncle Lee and the boatman. Maybe they had brought them here on purpose, but now it was impossible to go back and find someone else. Moreover, their things had been stolen after moving to the boat. Everyone had no choice but to get on the boat and continue moving forward. The boatman was a man who didn't talk much. As soon as he got on the boat, he buried his head and only focused on punting the boat. Uncle Lee would chat with everyone from time to time. Wu Sansheng felt that there was something wrong with Uncle Lee and the boatman, so he had been carefully vigilant about the two of them since they boarded the ship, secretly paying attention to their every move. Sumu felt that it didn't matter and acted very calmly. After all, in his eyes, these two people can't cause much trouble. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 118. A small boat swam slowly in the river, gradually approaching the cave in front. There are overgrown weeds along the shore. Occasionally, a frightened bird will fly out and make a piercing cry. The sound echoed in the mountain stream, making the silent atmosphere even more eerie. The boat slowly approached the cave. The closer you get to the cave, the light becomes darker and darker, and even the surrounding air seems quieter than outside. After entering, you must not speak loudly in the cave, so as not to disturb the river god, and do not look into the water. The boatman who had been silent suddenly spoke to warn everyone, but his words made everyone more curious about the scene inside the cave. What do you think it would be like in the cave? Fat Wang asked Pan Zi beside him in a low voice. Pan Zi shook his head and said, how did he know? Chen Wenjin also looked at the entrance of the cave very curiously. Watching the ship slowly enter the cave, the curiosity in his eyes became deeper. Wu Sansheng sat in the middle of the boat with a calm expression, waiting quietly, appearing very calm and mature. On the other hand, Sumu sat alone on the bow, squinting his eyes and concentrating, as if he didn't care about everything around him. Likewise, Wu Sansheng had to admire his composure. The ship had entered the cave. As the light gradually dimmed, Fatty Wang glanced at the surrounding mountain walls and said with some confusion, why does the structure of this cave look so like a robber's cave? Wu Sansheng also had the same idea and said in a deep voice, there must be something going on in this water thief cave. Everyone, cheer up and be careful. Everyone nodded, and Sumu also opened his eyes and sat up straight. What's so strange about this? The entire mountain is an ancient tomb, so it's not surprising that there are robber caves here. Seeing the surprised looks on everyone's faces, the boatman sneered and said, is the entire mountain covered with ancient tombs? Oh my gosh, how big is this project? Fatty Wang said with a surprised look. Others were also amazed and looked incredulous. As the boat went further in, the light became fainter and fainter, until the last trace of light disappeared. In the silent environment, Sumu and the others seemed to hear a strange sound. Everyone quickly turned on their flashlights and looked back, and saw that the boatman and Uncle Lee who were there just now were gone and had disappeared. Where are they? Fat Wang looked around with the flashlight in his hand, but there was no sign of the two of them. He looked into the water again, but because he could only see the dark water and reflections, he still couldn't find the boatman and Li uncle. There is no need to look for it, the two of them are willing to run away. Wu Sansheng had a serious look on his face. He knew that there was something wrong with those two people, but he didn't expect that the two of them would just leave them here. In a moment, he also figured everything out. The boatman and Uncle Lee had a problem from the beginning. They have already colluded. Uncle Lee took the people to the boatman, and the boatman took the people to this cave. The smell of death on the dog must be related to this corpse cave. This is why Uncle Lee said that only the boatman was able to enter the cave unharmed because they had the corpse smell of this cave on their bodies. And those people who were tricked by the boatman and Uncle Lee must have been like them, being carried here and then dumped here, and finally died a violent death. How did those people die? There must be some danger here that they don't know about. Thinking like this, Wu Sanzhong became even more vigilant. Sumyu naturally knew the reason, and also knew where the two people were. He glanced twice at the rock above his head. With the help of night eyes, he could clearly see the boatman, Uncle Li, and the local dog staying on top. He probably wanted to wait for them to die here, and then came up to pick up the things they were carrying. These two were so skilled that they probably didn't know how many times they had done it. Sumyu didn't bother to care about them. If these two guys stayed in the water, they would be killed by corpse turtles sooner or later. Without the boatman, naturally no one can continue to sail the boat. Wu Sanzhong figured out that the boatmen were able to come and go freely because of the corpse energy on their bodies. Now that the boatmen ran away, they had no corpse energy protection on them. He was afraid that stopping here would cause some trouble. So Pan Zi was asked to try to drive the boat. Pan Zi walked to the stern of the boat and pulled a few times on the engine cable, but found that there was something wrong with the boat's motor and it couldn't start. It had obviously been damaged by someone. Hold. Don't let me see those two guys again. If I do, I'll tear their heads off. Pan Zi kicked the motor angrily, and then told Wu Sanzhong that the boat was broken. What should we do now? The boat can't move, are we trapped here? Chen Wenjin looked at the dark environment around him and felt a little panicked. I don't want to die here. Fatty Wang also cautiously checked his surroundings with a flashlight, fearing that something might suddenly appear. Calm down, everyone, calm down, we can find a way out of here. Wu Sanzhong reminded everyone to stay calm, but he was quickly thinking of countermeasures. SHH. Don't talk yet. At this time, Sumyu suddenly spoke and signaled everyone to be silent. Everyone looked towards him and saw that he was looking solemnly towards the water. Everyone followed his gaze and looked into the water. Under the bright light of the flashlight, they saw that under the water at this moment, there was a huge shadow approaching their ship quickly. Chen Wenjin was so shocked that he quickly covered his mouth, fearing that he would make a sound due to fright. Fatty Wang also looked frightened, pulling Sumyu's finger and pointing. The things in the water did not dare to make any sound, but their expressions and movements seemed a bit funny. Wu Sanzhong also looked at the things in the water in horror, not knowing what they were talking about. Sumyu knew that. What is the thing in the water? It is actually a group of corpse turtles passing by. No one dared to make any sound for fear of disturbing the things in the water. However, Sumyu secretly activated the power of the ancestor dragon blood in his body. Directly releasing the pressure of the Zilong bloodline, they saw that the thing under the water that was about to swim under their boat suddenly stopped. Fatty! King Chen Wenjin and the others almost screamed out in horror. However, the next second they saw Sumyu squatted beside the boat, reached into the water, and pulled out a ferocious-looking thing from the water. The understatement made everyone freeze there. Sumyu looked at Sumyu in disbelief. Eyes full of reverence. Isn't this awesome? Fei Lu reminds you, 3 things about reading, collection, recommendation. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 119. After picking up a corpse turtle, Sumyu withdrew the pressure of the ancestral dragon bloodline. The group of corpse turtles that seemed to have pressed the pause button once again swam quickly across the bottom of the ship toward deeper places as if nothing had happened. When the group of corpse turtles disappeared from everyone's sight, Wu Sanzhong, Chen Wenjin, and the others seemed to let go of their raised hearts. In just a few short breaths, everyone seemed to have experienced some horrific event, and they all felt a little sweaty behind their backs. However, when they laid their eyes on Sumyu's hand, they all gasped. I saw that Sumyu was holding a large black carapace insect in his hand. The 6 abdomen and legs are all covered with black bristles, and the head has a sharp mouth part, which looks very ferocious. What is this thing? Fat Wang looked at the thing in Sumyu's hand in horror. He didn't understand why Sumyu caught that thing. So that huge shadow just now was actually a large group of these things. Even Wu Sanzheng was very surprised. Chen Wenjin stepped forward and carefully looked at the things in Sumyu's hands. At this moment, the black carapace creature had been crushed to death by Sumyu, but the black insect corpse was still recognized by Chen Wenjin. Come out. Is this a water lice? Chen Wenjin looked at the insect corpse in Sumyu's hand with confusion, but then he immediately shook his head and said, "No, it's probably not water lice. Water lice are not that big. This thing is a corpse turtle." Sumyu didn't let everyone continue to guess, and directly told the origin of this thing. Corpse turtle? What? It's a zombie. When everyone heard Sumyu's words, they immediately showed horrified expressions. They all knew about zombies, but this was the first time they saw such a big one. Moreover, corpses usually appear in places with many corpses. Obviously, this is the one in front of them. A place where corpses accumulate. Looking at the number of corpses just now, the corpse place in front must be quite large. I think we may have to leave this place quickly. Sumyu suddenly looked in the direction he came from, and reminded with a solemn expression. The group of corpse crickets made such a big noise just now. It was obvious that something must be chasing them behind them. They were running so fast to escape for their lives. In Sumyu's perception, there seemed to be something approaching in the direction of the ship. At this moment, it seemed impossible for them to return the way they came. Sumyu's expression was so solemn that everyone's hearts began to rise. They obviously felt something and knew they had returned. Now they could only move forward by taking secret photos. Now the boat's motor is broken, and everyone can only carry the spare oars in the boat and walk. However, before paddling far, a very strange ringing sound suddenly came from the water. The ringtone seemed to be bewitching, and Fatty Wang, Chen Wenjin, and the others suddenly became in a trance. Looking ahead with blurred eyes, he was suddenly bewitched by the ringing sound. When Sumyu saw something bad, he immediately stood up, walked to them, raised his feet, and kicked each of them directly into the water. Plop! 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 There were 4 sounds of falling into the water in a row, and the 4 of them, Fatty Chen Wenjin, Wang Sanwen of Wu Province, and Pan Zi, had all jumped into the water. Sumyu frowned slightly and looked in the direction where the ringing sound came from. He himself was not affected at all by the ringtone just now. The sonic attack from the ringtone just now was not as powerful as the big red-haired rice dumpling in Jingju ancient city. Moreover, Sumyu had already become immune to sonic attacks, so now he could easily kick several other people into the water with his normal job. The moment Wu Sangxing, Wang Fatty and the 4 of them heard the bell, they felt that they had entered a very mysterious state. It was as if I was in a vast white space, with only the ringtone in my ears, and nothing else could be felt. However, just as Sumyu kicked them into the water, all 4 of them felt that they suddenly woke up from that state. The whole person couldn't help but shuddered, and then he immediately got out of the water. Phew, cough cough. Damn it, who kicked me into the water? What happened just now? I seem to have lost consciousness. When a few people came up, they realized that they had been bewitched by the ringing just now, and they felt horrified in their hearts. Wu Sanzheng looked at Sumyu with a wry smile and said, "You're not polite at all. It doesn't matter, as long as it works." Sumyu spread his hands to express his innocence, but just as he was about to pull a few people up, he saw a huge thing rushing towards them at an extremely fast speed. Sumyu's reaction made Wu Sanzheng and others look back. However, just one glance made them tremble with fear. Behind them, they saw a large corpse cricket swimming towards them quickly. They could even see the ferocious mouthparts of the large corpse cricket slowly opening. Open! Damn it, hurry up, get on the boat. Fat Wang swam towards the side of the boat in panic, and the others also reacted unanimously. However, with their speed, when they caught the side of the boat, the corpse was already close. At this critical moment, a cold light flashed in Mu's hand, and a sharp long sword was revealed. The big corpse frog jumped out of the water and rushed towards the crowd at an extremely fast speed. However, the next second a sound of breaking through the air came, and that just as the giant corpse cricket leaped over Wu Sanzhong and the others, it was split into two halves by a cold light. Plop! Plop! Two loud sounds of falling into the water were heard, and several people who had been stunned came back to their senses, looking at Sumu standing on the boat in amazement. Sumu was still holding a light sword in his hand at this moment. He held the sword in one hand and slid the sword fingers across the sword body with the other hand. His posture was like that of a peerless expert, which made people look at him with horror. The sword just now was completely invisible. Wu Sanzhong had never seen such a magical sword before. He was very surprised for a moment, but Chen Wenjin recognized the origin of the sword and exclaimed, "Is this the legendary lightsaber?" Sumu looked at her in surprise when he heard this. He didn't expect that there was someone who knew the goods. But now is not the time to talk about this. Looking at the corpse of the big corpse in the water, Sumu directly asked Fatty Wang and Pan Zi. The two fished out the two halves of the body from the water, Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 120. The four of them climbed onto the boat again, and Fatty Wang and Pan Zi also fished the corpse of the giant corpse turtle onto the boat. The two halves of the corpse were placed there, and the incision was as smooth and flat as laser cutting. It was obvious how powerful Sumu's sword was just now. Chen Wenjin silently moved away from the disgusting corpse. This insect corpse simply made her hair stand on end. Although Fatty Wang was afraid of the living corpse frog, he was not so afraid since it had been killed by Sumu. When he was fishing out the corpse frog, Fatty Wang accidentally discovered that there was something hanging on the tail of the corpse frog. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a bronze hexagonal bell. Huh? What is this thing? Fat Wang thought it was a treasure, so he took the bronze hexagonal bell off the body of the corpse. He took it in his hand and looked at it. He was about to try shaking it when he was scolded by a voice. "Don't move, don't shake." It was Pan Zi's voice. Fatty Wang raised his head and looked at him suspiciously, and saw him walking over quickly. He took the hexagonal copper bell in Fatty Wang's hand, put it directly on the board of the ship, and then stepped on it with one foot. Broken bell. Hey, what are you doing? Fat Wang didn't expect Pan Zi to behave like this. He was stunned for a second before he reacted. He was about to get angry when Sumu stopped him. "Fatty, wait a minute." Sumu stopped Fatty Wang and signaled him to listen to Pan Zi's explanation. Sure enough, the next second, Pan Zi squatted down and peeled off the remaining pieces of the bell, and said while playing with it, "The deceptive ringtone just now was made by this thing. If you ring it, we will still have to suffer." As he spoke, Pan Zi peeled off the remaining pieces of the bell and revealed what was inside. Everyone stepped forward to take a closer look and found that it turned out to be a centipede. Presumably what really confuses people is the ability of the centipede. I guess the centipede and the corpse cricket should have a symbiotic relationship. The centipede relies on the corpse cricket to protect itself, and the corpse cricket relies on the centipede to bewitch its prey. General Wu Sanzhong he spoke out his guess. Everyone thought that this should be the case. In fact, Sumu had known this for a long time, but he thought it was too troublesome to explain and was too lazy to say it. "Look, what is that?" Just when Wu Sanzhong was explaining his guess, Pan Zi suddenly pointed not far away and exclaimed, Everyone looked where he pointed and saw the light of several people's flashlights on the water not far away. Under the illumination, the water surface in that area was dyed red, and then two figures slowly emerged. Ah! When he saw the two corpses floating on the water, Chen Wenjin let out a scream of fear, and then jumped behind Wu Sanzhong, looking quite frightened. I saw the two corpses floating quietly on the water, and a large circle around them had already been stained red with blood. One of their bodies had its head half bitten off. The other corpse had almost half of its body bitten off, and its appearance was simply creepy. Judging from the style of the clothes, they were obviously those of Uncle Li and the boatman from before. It was obvious that they wanted to wait for an opportunity to attack them first. However, they didn't expect that someone would be driven towards them by the big corpse cricket, and they happened to run into them. The two of them lost their lives directly under the attack of the large group of corpse crickets, and not even a whole corpse was left behind. No one had any sympathy for the death of Li Bo and the boatman. For such evil-minded people, death means death. They have fewer safety risks, and they no longer need to be poisoned by others when they accidentally let down their guard. But everyone was a little sad. If Sumu hadn't taken action just now, I'm afraid their fate would be similar to the two of them now, so they should be grateful to Sumu for surviving. Fatty, go and hang the corpse on the bow of the boat, and we'll use the corpse to clear the way. Sumu took one look at the corpse in the water and stopped looking at it. Sumu had already foreseen the fate of the two of them, but he didn't feel it at all at the moment. They might just be useful to him. The tool man who opened the way for the corpse odor, now that they are gone, there is a corpse turtle that can be used. When Fatty Wang heard Sumu's instructions, he tied the corpse turtle to the bow of the ship without hesitation. This corpse turtle grows in the yin energy in this corpse cave was extremely heavy, and it was placed there enough to protect everyone as they walked inside. After finishing it, everyone worked together to row the boat. They rowed together for an unknown length of time, when Sumu suddenly spoke and reminded. The yin energy ahead is extremely heavy, and it looks like the place where corpses will accumulate is coming. Soon, the boat approached the river bank. Sumu knew that this was the most dangerous area in the water cave, and there were still many unknown dangers waiting for them in the dark. Others were also cautious and vigilant, feeling the same: the place is not very safe. Because they have seen the surrounding environment with the light in their hands. Skeletons are piled up on the shallow water cave. Obviously, it is unknown how many people died in this place, and Sumu as he was looking around, checking for potential crises. He remembered that in the original book, there was a crystal coffin in the corpse dump. Inside the coffin was a long-haired female ghost who was extremely ferocious. However, when Sumu's flashlight swept when he passed 4 weeks, his pupils suddenly contracted and he discovered something that shocked him. Different from the original work, there were actually 4 crystal coffins placed on the stone wall. Damn it, it's really not that simple. Sumu cursed secretly in his heart, and his expression became a little solemn. Wu Sanzhong and others beside him also saw the crystal coffin on the stone wall, and were also shocked. They took flashlights and shined the crystal coffin. You can vaguely see from the outside that there seems to be nothing inside. There seems to be nothing inside, Fat Wang said in confusion. Everyone looked carefully and found that there was nothing in the 4 crystal coffins. They were all empty. Why are there 4 empty coffins here? Pan Zi touched his chin in confusion. Fatty Wang thought for a while, and seemed to have thought of something. He couldn't help but shudder, and said in a trembling voice. Could something in the coffin, have escaped? Don't scare me. Chen Wenjin was so frightened that his voice rose slightly, but then he smiled dryly and comforted everyone. Don't think too much. Maybe there was nothing in the coffin. I don't know if these words appeased everyone, but in order to ensure safety, everyone stayed in place and stayed alert for a while. After waiting for a long time, there was no movement. Everyone thought that they had guessed wrong and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. However, Sumu didn't think so. He knew that things would definitely not be as simple as they imagined. Although everyone was frightened by the situation inside the crystal coffin for a while, after nothing happened, everyone decided to move on. Everyone worked together to continue paddling the boat, and the water flow slowly drove the boat forward. Just when the boat came to a corner, they suddenly saw a figure in white standing there, underscore.